The storm clouds had barely cleared that morning when Emily found herself standing on the side of the desolate mountain road, one hand resting on her swollen belly and the other shielding her eyes from the harsh glare of the rising sun. She hadn't planned to be there. She hadn't planned for her old sedan to sputter and die in the middle of nowhere, or for her life to feel like it was unraveling day by day. But nothing could have prepared her for the moment she saw the massive black motorcycle sprawled across the gravel shoulder, smoke puffing from its engine, and a man, tattooed, leather-clad, and wounded, kneeling beside it. There was blood dripping from his forearm. His jacket bore the unmistakable emblem of the Hells Angels. And she was alone, pregnant, frightened, and unsure if she should run or stay. Yet something, some quiet voice inside her, told her to take one step forward. That single step would change everything. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the way unexpected moments can shape our lives, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. It truly helps stories like this reach more hearts. Emily's world had already been trembling like glass. Her fiancé, once the love of her life, had walked out months earlier when he learned she was pregnant. She had been working 2 part-time jobs, barely sleeping, trying to gather the courage to raise a child alone. She had been driving to a small town miles away for a job interview that could have changed things for her and her baby, but fate, as always, redirected her to a harder, stranger path. As she approached the biker, she felt her heart pounding, yet she noticed something surprising. The man's eyes weren't threatening, they were pained, tired, almost defeated. His motorcycle chain had snapped, whipping against his arm when he tried to brake. He was stranded just like she was. Even though she was trembling, Emily used her shirt to help wrap his bleeding arm and guided him to sit. She knew first aid from her time volunteering at a community center. She checked his injury, steadied her breathing, and gathered a courage she didn't realize she still possessed. The man introduced himself as Travis, though his voice was low and rough. Emily helped him inspect the bike, realizing he just needed a temporary fix to get to the nearest town. With hands shaking from exhaustion, hunger, and pregnancy aches, she worked beside him under the harsh sun, tying the chain just enough for slow movement. Her back was screaming in pain, and her shirt was damp with sweat. But as they worked, he kept glancing at her belly with something that looked a lot like concern. When she mentioned her car had broken down too, Travis insisted she take his water and rest. She didn't know whether to accept help from a stranger, especially a stranger with a past she could only guess at. But she did. When they finally got his bike functioning enough to move, he grunted that he'd send someone back for her, though she doubted he actually would. Men had made promises to her before, promises that had dissolved like smoke. But the next morning shattered every expectation she had. Just after dawn, Emily was woken by the sound of engines, multiple engines growling outside the small roadside motel she had limped her way to after Travis left. She froze, thinking trouble had found her, but when she peeked outside, her breath caught in her chest. A full line of Hells Angels motorcycles filled the parking lot. The men stood there, not sneering, not hostile, but silent and oddly respectful. Travis stepped forward, his arm now neatly bandaged, and told her they were there because kindness demanded repayment. Everything that happened next felt almost unreal. One of the bikers, a mechanic, immediately towed her dead car to the side lot and began working on it with tools she couldn't even name. Another set down bags of groceries, the kind she hadn't been able to afford in months. Fresh fruit, bottled water, vitamins for pregnancy, even soft muffins she could eat despite her nausea. Travis handed her an envelope. Inside was money, not charity, he insisted, but thanks. He told her that most people crossed the road when they saw someone like him. She didn't. She helped. And that kind of courage, that kind of heart deserves something back. Emily felt tears rising faster than she could blink them away. For months she had felt invisible, unsupported, and utterly alone. But here, in the strangest twist of fate, rough men society judged as dangerous were treating her with more kindness and dignity than anyone else had. As the mechanic worked, Travis leaned against his bike and spoke softly about how he once had a family but lost them because he never knew how to be gentle. Her helping him, a pregnant stranger on a lonely road, reminded him of the better man he once tried to be. He wasn't trying to scare her or impress her. It was simply the truth. Sometimes life offered pieces of redemption in unexpected hands. By noon, her car was not only repaired but running smoother than it had in years. The mechanic waved off her attempts to thank him, saying it was club business. When they were ready to leave, Travis placed a hand gently on her shoulder, a gesture soft enough that even in her vulnerable state she didn't flinch. He told her that her child was lucky to have a mother like her, someone who stood strong even when the world pushed hard. Then the roar of engines filled the air again, and the group rode off, disappearing down the same road where she had first seen him broken and bleeding. Emily sat back in her car afterwards, hands shaking over the steering wheel, overwhelmed by how one moment of courage, one choice to help someone others might fear, brought a wave of compassion back into her life. She cried for a long time, not from sadness, but from the astonishing reminder that goodness could come from the most unexpected places. The experience gave her hope again, hope that she could raise her child, rebuild her life, and trust that kindness would find its way to her, sooner or later, in strange and extraordinary ways. If this story touched your heart even a little, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps bring more life-changing stories to the world. Before the ending, I'd love for you to comment, "Kindness comes back." Emily drove away that day feeling lighter than she had in years, the wind brushing through the open window as her baby kicked softly beneath her ribs. For the first time in a long, long while, she didn't feel alone. She felt protected, guided, and reminded that even on the hardest roads, grace can arrive wearing leather and riding on two wheels. And as the mountains faded behind her, she whispered a quiet promise to her unborn child, that no matter how difficult life became, kindness would always be their compass, their strength, and their way forward.